See, this is where you must have young children at home. They are the most handy people at home for technological issues.
Generation Z.
Seriously.
The only problem is they do it so fast you don't even understand what they're doing.
Exactly. Even 8-year-olds, I'm amazed the way they can manage.
That's because they're all digital natives.
True.
We are all migrants. We were all used to the postcard culture and then came into the internet era, whereas they don't even know what a picture postcard means.
Very true. Today they have come back as stickers on for your fridge and almirahs.
Yeah, you have to put on the finalist list. Start the program. It's 3. Yeah. Yeah, you can be there and you can start immediately. Yeah.
Sorry for the delay. Hello.
Yes, madam, we can go ahead.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Meghna. I had a little bit of technical issues trying to log in here. Assistant Professor, College of Journalism and Mass Communication. I'm here to welcome everyone here who's awaiting for this distinguished guest lecture organized by Bytes in association with Dayanand Sagar University. Today's distinguished speaker, Ms. Trudy Shivaram, who's a journalist, filmmaker, and an independent consultant with CAN Global, will talk to us about writing skills and media. Happy to have you with us today, ma'am.
Thank you.
Ms. Trudy Shivaram has over 3 decades of rich experience as a journalist in print, radio, TV, and news media. She started off in the HR area, identifying exclusive profiles and passive candidates, and is adept at networking, image building, and brand management, interacting with premier research organizations, academia, government, and industry. She's operating as an independent consultant for the last 17 years. She has written extensively for Deccan Herald and was a columnist for Prajavani for a few months. She has worked with Doordarshan and has scripted documentaries. Her latest and most ambitious film, At the Altar of India's Freedom, made it to the IFFI in 2019 and the NYIFF later. It's indeed a pleasure to have you with us, ma'am. Professor Renuka of CJMC will be the moderator of this session. Now I request the distinguished speaker to deliver the lecture.
Thank you, Meghna. And at the outset, I would like to express my gratitude and thanks to Professor K.N.B. Murthy and the Vice Chancellor of Dayanand Sagar University, Dr. Jasma Balasangameshwar, Dr. Rakesh Katare, Professor Krishna, and my childhood friend, Professor Arvind Srinivas, who's been instrumental in bringing me on board here. So, and I thank every one of my audience who have logged in to hear me this 1 hour that I'm going to be talking, the 45 minutes that I'm going to be talking. Thank you so much. And there are a couple of slides that I will be going through, but I will be skipping past some of them for paucity of time. I can always revisit. And if I have the permission of the panel, I would like to start my talk and presentation.
Yes, madam, please go ahead.
And if there's anybody I have left out in thanking for this opportunity, please forgive me for that, my apologies, but I thank every one of you who have been involved in this initiative. So primarily, we are talking about writing skills and media, which is today the most active hub virtually all around us, engulfs us totally. So the agenda is what is the context and why writing. And when we say story writing, students of journalism will understand this, but this is for non-students of journalism. We refer to an article as story. It's a story not in the sense of fiction, but it is about writing that we refer to as story. So I'll be touching on what are the essentials of journalism and definitely the impact of internet. And so we start with this saying from Socrates. This was about 2000 years ago. He says, people will be hearers of many things and will have learned nothing. Isn't that what we do with WhatsApp today? And they will appear to be omniscient and will generally know nothing, which we all experience around us. And definitely they'll be tiresome company, having the show of wisdom without reality. Now, how very, very factual and true this is, even contextually for today, we all face this challenge. So from where Socrates left 2000 years ago, we still remain there. So today media has engulfed us completely. So from newspapers to social networking to mobile platforms to video games, media has become a necessary, so it's a daily activity as much as your food or clothing. It has started shaping our life. People wake up with the cell phone and they carry to the bathroom also, so they can't do without being connected. Connectivity, which is a form of media, has engulfed us completely. So when we talk of media in the serious sense, now media is the backbone of a healthy democracy. We call it the watchdog, and it is also called the fourth estate. Now, why is media so important for a healthy democracy? Is because there are various social issues, political, economic activities happening around us. Now, somebody needs to keep a watch on what is happening, what is going wrong. In fact, more than what is going right, people are trying to keep an eye on what is going wrong, and they want to expose this. Now, it is only when the wrongdoings of people in power, whether it's political, social, or in the economic forum, one gets to have a check and balance on society. So media is the healthy watchdog of society. So the wrongdoings are exposed. So media is also called the fourth estate because naturally it's as important as our legislature, executive, or the judiciary. So the importance of media is no less than the other three arms of democracy. Now, technology has completely changed the scenario since a couple of decades. I remember when I had to file an article in the mid 80s, it had to be sent to US and I needed internet for that. And other than one of the departments of Indian Institute of Science, there was no internet anywhere else, and they wouldn't give it to a private person. Somebody fooled me saying that he will send the pages on internet, and even those days I ended up paying something like 600 rupees and the article never went. So just imagine from there to today where we have reached, technology, the way it has overtaken. So what has happened with technology is the process of gathering, producing, and disseminating of news has changed. We used to do a lot of legwork. We used to do a lot of physical reading, going and sitting in the library for endless number of hours, searching for material. Now, all that has changed. We've got information at the click of a button on our cell phone. Forget the computer, it's on the cell phone. So the way media has been operating because of technology has changed drastically and for the better, in fact. So the whole process has become a capsule that is so much more convenient, but of course it has its the other adverse side to it, but I'm not touching that. The whole face of media has changed in the decades because of technology. And media has now, I spoke of the fourth estate, the three estates of democracy and media being the fourth, but today, thanks to technology, we have a fifth estate, which is citizen journalism. Now, citizen journalists are becoming increasingly active and popular because everybody has access to connectivity, has access to information, has access to, with their handheld phone, they can record events, they can meet people, they can connect easily. So with that, citizen journalism has become very active. What you see in your WhatsApp, the WhatsApp videos that we get, where so much is happening, are part of this citizen journalism. So to that extent, internet is being put to maximum use. So if we are talking of writing, now, why would one want to write? So one is, so why would one want to write? There are various reasons why one would like to take to writing. One is it fosters creativity. There is definitely a creative element in a person that motivates him to express himself. So it fosters creativity. Then it structures thoughts, because if you have to write something, obviously you need to have it completely structured mentally. You need to be organized mentally for that. And then it's the reading habit. It naturally, it is the other side of the coin. If you want to write, you will also have to read. If you want somebody to read what you have written, obviously you will have to read what somebody else has written. So it develops a reading habit, which is a very healthy habit. And the other important aspect is it's a de-stressor by itself. Just writing is a de-stressor. So there are different genres of journalism, of media, which is journalistic writing. Then there is fiction. When I say journalistic writing, it's naturally articles. Then there is fiction. Then there is essays. Essays, thanks to our school teachers who nurtured this habit of writing essays. It was part of the school. I don't know if it still exists in today's curriculum, but in our days, essay was a big part of our studies in English and part of the examination also. Then we have documentation, which is a huge area of demand in writing skills. Now, when I say writing skills, it's not just about journalism, but these are all the various areas. So documentation happens with, am I going too fast? Please tell me stop me if I'm going too fast. Am I going too fast?
Not at all, madam.
Okay, fine. So documentation is where a lot of technological organizations, whether it's engineering, medicine, or even the management part of it, they all need some amount of documentation of their work or studies or research or their the progress they've made. So all of these need to be documented and put into a kind of a writing documentation. So they need people who can write. Now there are a lot of techies, a lot of people in core technology, whichever discipline it is, are not as savvy with the written word. A lot of speakers, in fact, a lot of people who speak well are obviously not good writers themselves. So they need documentation. So people will engage those who have expertise in writing for documentation. That's another area which is very specialized. And of course, humor. Now our newspapers, definitely devote a certain amount of space towards humor writing. That's again a very specialized area. Not everybody is gifted with the skill of writing humor and satire. So this is an area that is very specialized and definitely a very enjoyable space for those of us who open the newspaper reading all kinds of stressful stuff more than happy stuff. This little piece of humor is really a good break. So that is one. And content writing. Now, content writing is another area. When I say content writing, it relates to, documentary films. They need people to write content for them, who will write the script. Ad agencies need. Now, companies need for their PR promotional material. They need, the folders that they create. They need people who can write content for that. So content writing is another area that is one of the, it's a very engaging kind of area to write, because when you take to content writing, you're educating yourself on various aspects. Once you will be writing about technology, another time you're writing about pharma, another time you're writing about some promotional stuff. So it can be diversified, and content writing is another good area to look at. Another important area that I will talk about in the others, when we say others, is about diary writing. Now, our fathers and grandfathers, diligently wrote a diary every day. I don't know if the habit exists today, but in school, when we were taken out on excursions, it was mandatory for us to write a diary, and it had to be presented in class. So this diary keeping is a kind of a documentation in itself. And some of the most amazing literary works have emerged out of these diaries now, those of them who have become famous with their diaries never wrote it for publication or to make it kind of a public, to make it public as such. It was there for their personal content, maybe a de-stressor, or to just document what happens in their lives. But that becomes an amazing record of the times, of the kind of experiences of the person. And one amazing work that I can recall in the stock is The Diary of Anne Frank. Now, it was made into a film also. Here was this 14-year-old girl who wrote a diary when she was hiding from the Nazis in Netherlands with her family. For 2 years, they were in hiding. So she wrote amazingly, documenting every day of her life, of what was happening in Nazi occupation. So diary writing is definitely a good habit one can engage with. So channels of journalism. Now, channels of journalism, these are just a few, but there is such a wide spectrum of it. One is our internet has become a channel of journalism, television. In our days, it was just television, radio, and newspapers, which, of course, magazines part of the print media. But today, there is any number of them. So these are the channels of journalism open. Now, the wide spectrum bring print, radio, digital media, photography is an area by itself, and films. Films, again, is documentary films, short films, and fiction. So these are the areas that are open for aspiring journalists. Now, if we take to story writing, now the points to ponder. When somebody wants to take to writing, you need to ask yourself, why do you want to write? There must be a reason why somebody would want to write. And what do you want to write? Who is once you've decided that you want to write and what you want to write, you need to know who is your audience, whom are you writing for? And once you know your target audience, then you will have to decide what is going to be the takeaway for the or reader. The reader, obviously, if he has to read your article, he has to have a takeaway in that, in whichever ways. So what is the value add that the reader is going to get with your article is something you need to ponder upon. And there are so many common topics. The latest being now, the Olympic Games that just concluded. Everybody is writing about it, but everybody is writing something different. No two articles are the same. There is no replication. Though the subject is common, people are treating it differently, looking for new angles. So where does this bring us? Now, in this, why we want to write and what we want to write, we have to develop a talent for identifying stories, which we call as nose for news. So we need to identify what makes a good story. What is it that a reader would be interested in? And that is where we have to keep our antennas tuned. So we'll have to definitely write something that is unusual. Because if, in our days, the common example given was man bites dog. Today, it's different. So we need to look for something unusual. Now, this unusual, the eye for news, the nose for news happens when our antennas are tuned. For instance, I'm walking down a road, I see a cobbler who's reading a book, a literary book. Now, that catches my attention. when I talked to him, I realized he's educated, he's a voracious reader, and how he finds time between his work to sit in the noisy street and read. Now, this makes an amazing, inspiring story. So these are just examples that one can look at, not the run-of-the-mill stories, but in a common environment, look for something different. Now, in the pandemic, the outbreak of pandemic, we had any number of these stories about doctors, the way they kind of battled adversities, and still, the doctor living in his car, or even the mayor of Mumbai, Kishori Pednekar, a nurse herself, how she donned the uniform and came back to serve. So these are all stories that make not only interesting reading, but that will also make an impact on the reader. So one needs to have their antennas tuned and be observant. So that is one, and this relates to socioeconomic stories, human interest stories, particularly when you travel. For instance, when we were driving down in Kerala recently, at every junction almost, we would find an open library. Now, there is a library where there are books and newspapers and people are sitting and reading. So this is something we don't find usually in every other state or every place. So this is something that catches the attention, and why not write? Then you will discover that there are 100 libraries in a 10-kilometer radius, which takes you back to the reading habit of people in Kerala. So it makes a kind of a interesting read, but also an educative read. So when you read a story, it kind of raises questions in your mind. That shows that the story is not, if you're reading an article and you come back with questions that don't answer you, it's an incomplete article. So what it means for you as a writer is, do not leave gaps in your article. You must fill in the kind of information that is required. And these gaps are also fertile. When you're reading an article and you find a gap in the article, that's a fertile space for you to do an article. It's a fertile space for you to look for something to write on. So these are all areas on which we should look at for opportunities in writing. The other aspect is follow-up stories. Now, we have very little of this. You will find many people asking, what happened to so-and-so? What happened to that so-and-so case? Oh, it was all over the media, but today we don't know what's happened. So follow-up stories are lacking in today's media. So this is something that one can look at. If something was written about 10 years or 5 years or even 2 years ago, and you feel that it has not been updated, that's a story that is something that can work on. If I can give an example of my own writing, the Thiruvananthapuram Padmanabhaswamy, Sri Padmanabhaswamy temple made huge news, world headlines, and it was all over media continuously till last year when the judgment was passed, and after that there was silence. So what did I do? 1 year later, I wrote an article. I wrote, because the case had been resolved, so it was no longer sub judice, I had the freedom to write. So I wrote about the process. What happened during those 10 years of litigation? What did the litigants go through? What were the changes that happened? So these are kind of stories that one could look at if they want to write. Follow-up stories are a great opportunity for writing. So again, in writing, the elements that one needs to, look at, you need to plan your story. What is it you want? What are the elements you want in your article? And, if you want to write about, say, PV Sindhu, what is it you want to write about PV Sindhu? You want to write about the technique of her game? You want to write about her schooling? You want to write about her ambitions as far as education is concerned? What is the area you want to cover? Or do you want to write about her training process? Or do you want to write about what she looks at future? There are so many angles which you can look at. So you will need to first think, what is the angle you want to take? What are the elements? And having decided that in an article, the most crucial thing is you must know how much and how much not to put in your article. For instance, for every article, you will have information that you can write a book, actually. So, if you've done your homework diligently, you will come back with so much material, but you can't put all of that material. For instance, I would have read an entire book for an article, but I may use just 2 lines out of it, or I may use maximum 4 lines out of that book. But you will have to decide how much and how much not. Brevity, your students of journalism, your teachers would have taught you about brevity, but brevity of content comes with brevity of thought. If you can organize your thoughts well and decide on what's the most important thing you want to convey in your article, that makes it interesting reading. So you will have to pay a lot of attention on you need to decide, once you write the entire story, you will have to start chopping it yourself, and you will have to decide what should not be in the article and what doesn't go well with it. Now, the other important thing we need to keep in mind is the attention span of the reader. Today, research has said that the attention span of human beings is only 8 seconds, which means after 8 seconds, your mind is off from whatever you're doing. It has to be brought back. So your article has to be so engaging that the reader is not going to leave it, that the reader is going to sit with your article till he completes it fully. So you have to keep in mind the attention span of the reader. The other thing is, most important thing is you have to be factual. You have to be factual. If you're not writing fiction, then you have to be factual in what you're going to write, because people are going to believe what you write. And when people believe you, that goes to your credit, because your credibility rests there. And if you write something that is incorrect or not factually right, tomorrow, if you write a damn good article, also people are going to look at it skeptically, saying, I'm not sure of the facts in it. So you're building your credibility with your written word. You have to be absolutely factual. To be factual, you have to do your homework. You have to be doubly sure of the facts that you have gathered. And when I say doubly sure of the facts you've gathered, you have to keep verifying the information that you've got. You can't take it at face value. Somebody said something, you can't take it at face value. You will have to do due diligence, do a lot of homework, and make sure that the facts you have got are actually factual and they're not false information given to you by somebody. So once you have put in all these elements of what you want to write and how much you want to write, and the thoughts in it, the other crucial elements are the language. Now, I have heard a lot of people say that they have a flair for writing, or so and so has a flair for writing. What is it when we say flair for writing? It is that comfort where somebody can just write. Somebody can, you've thought of something, you felt something, and you're able to just articulate it in words and put it down in writing. So this is many people say it's a gift, but I'm not sure whether it is such an exclusive thing. I'm sure people can try their hand at writing, and it is something that can be nurtured. I'm not so, I don't want to give exclusivity to this. I feel that everyone who makes up their mind can be a good writer. It needs practice, it needs the will. So you'll have to cultivate the language for that, because language is your medium. So you will have to cultivate language. Again, I go back to reading, because if you're listening to somebody, you're just listening to his language. If you're reading, you're cross-section. So many books you read, you're listening to so many languages of so many people. So reading gives you cross-reference. You read something which is about an issue, but you read another book that demolishes the whole idea of it. So you've got two opposite sides of the same issue. So it gives you cross references, which again becomes an idea for your story. Now, here is an idea that you can pick and write about. So it not only improves your language skills, it gives you ideas. It gives you ideas to write articles. When you read, it gives you ideas. So language is something one needs to develop as a skill, and that comes with reading and also trying to put in the effort to write, make a beginning. And the one good way of developing language skills, this was a practice given to us in our stage of learning journalism during our initial days. This was part of it. We were to rewrite a published story. In fact, you read an article and you start rewriting it. You start finding faults in its, narrative, the way it has been, the language, the punctuations, spell errors. Today we don't have spelling mistakes, but there were teleprinter copies where they were manually, they used to compose it manually. So there used to be a lot of spelling mistakes in those days. So today we don't have that problem, but we have a problem of a different kind, where you have your spell check and your autocorrect, which makes a big mess out of the language that you're dealing with. And you won't even notice if something has gone on autocorrect and it means completely different. So one has to, to hone your writing skills, you need to start rewriting articles that have been published. It's a joy. Actually, you'll enjoy doing it. If you can write it, how can I write it differently? If you make it an exercise, it's quite an enjoyable thing, like crossword. So technology has removed this native intelligence from us because of this auto edit, and a lot of us have forgotten spellings of words. Honestly, including me, a lot of us have forgotten the spellings of very basic words, and we get mixed up and we go and right click and see whether that's the right thing. Then you've got your thesaurus, you've got your dictionary. So we are all mixed up. The brain has stopped working in that area. It's become lazy towards language. This is something we need to come out of and start paying attention to. Now, many of you would have heard of the writer's block. Now, writer's block is something that almost every writer would have had to deal with. Every writer goes through this writer's block, where you want to write something, you've just started, but you really don't know how to get started. Somewhere you've written 2 lines and then you're just blank. You feel that you can't write anymore. Or what do I write? Oh, I have nothing to write. It brings you to a blank. So one need not worry. If you hit the writer's block, certainly it's not a matter to worry or to make you think that you're no good at writing or you can't write. You shouldn't let this, you shouldn't let this unnerve you. What one needs to do when you hit the writer's block is just take a break. Put your thoughts together when you're working on something, or when you're doing any other activity. You keep thinking of it in the back of your mind, and there comes the click. So okay, this is what I need to write. So writer's block is something that shouldn't unnerve anybody. And you write something, leave it for some time, revisit it after a few hours or maybe even a few days if you're not you're working on a deadline. When you revisit it, you will see that, okay, you want to write differently. Okay, this is not what I wanted to write. And then you're able to refine what you have put together. So a writer's block is actually something that one shouldn't, get discouraged with, but just deal with it by taking a break, by reading, by thinking about it, or revisiting the page later. Now, this is an important area of when you write, what do you want in it, the do's and don'ts of it. Like I said earlier, you come back with a lot of material for an article. If it's a 500 words article, you will come back with almost 5,000 pages of material that you would have researched on or people would have directed you to. So you can't put all of it together. Don't put everything in a story. If I can, I will give you the example of the story I did recently on INS Rajput. Many of you perhaps would have read about it. It was a ship that was decommissioned by the Indian Navy. So when I wrote that article, there is this temptation to write. The angle I took was a personal angle of my personal experience with the ship and things like that. But I gave it a human angle, but then I could have also put the technological aspects, the various exercises that the ship was involved in, and then, what is the size of the ship, what are the technicalities of it, how it was acquired, what was the process of acquired. I could have put all of it and nobody would have read my story. So I will need to decide, do I want to do a technical article on Rajput? Do I want to give it a human angle? Do I want to talk about what is a ship? and for a common man to understand, for other than those serving in the Navy. So you can't put everything into an article. You will have to decide how much you want to put, what you want to put. And a very important thing is, do not copy. The temptation to copy is so high, so high. Today it is so easy that one forgets their own, it makes it easy, less of hard work. But do not copy, because every writer can identify every word that they have written. Like I, as a writer, can identify if somebody has lifted even a few sentences out of my article. So do not copy, because one is your credibility. Now a Google search, I have to just put that sentence on Google search, and then it gets detected. The whole article is there, and people will know it's not your story. You have lifted from somewhere, bits and pieces. And I will tell you, incidentally, a small alteration to my introduction. I started as a journalist, straight into HR as a consultant, was an independent consultant, and then I'm back in media. And I had not left media at any point of time, but thanks to my media experience, thanks to the kind of expertise media gives, one also makes a good HR professional. By the way, if you're a media person, you'll make a damn good HR professional also, I can tell you that. So during that time, I'm digressing a little, but I'm coming back to the issue of copying. I used to get a lot of resumes which were copied. So when you have to just go to properties and see who the author is, the copied resume will show you an author who is not your name, somebody else. So it's so detectable. Copying is something that it's a big temptation, but don't fall for it. Do not copy, because it also amounts to plagiarism and affects your credibility. Now, objectivity is a crucial ingredient in reporting. Now, one has to be objective, because every story has multiple angles, not just two angles, multiple angles. Somebody will be telling you, yes, this so-and-so, happened. His license, if it's somebody whose license is cancelled for, rash driving, he'll say his license was cancelled. The police were wrongfully cancelled. Or, the driver will have his own version. So in all this, there are multiple things that come in. You will have to put all angles over. You'll have to, when you're writing, you'll have to tell what the police have to say about it. You'll have to write what the person whose license was cancelled, what he has to say, what exactly happened. So you'll have to include all the angles. I'll give you one example. Of course, it is no longer, one can't even imagine that in today's media. But when we were students, this is what we were taught. When Gandhiji died, those days there was no television. So BBC was reporting his funeral procession on radio. And the correspondent who was giving the commentary of this procession, at some point of time, he became emotional. He did not weep. His voice choked. That is all that happened. His voice just choked. And he was removed from his job. He lost his job primarily because he had no business to express himself or reveal his emotions in that. He had to be so objective. Now, that was the standards of BBC those days. But that is what was expected of media, to be non-partisan of any kind. You cannot reveal your emotions or your biases in your article unless it's an op-ed or opinion piece, or you've been asked to specially write about what you think. Otherwise, if you're reporting something or if you're presenting an article for the reader, then you have to be objective. You cannot take sides. You will have to leave it to the reader to judge. You present all sides of the facts and let the reader judge whichever ways he wants. Somebody tell me if I'm exceeding my time limit, please. I hope I'm not exceeding. I'm well on time.
Yes, madam. Yes. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So coming to, again, I have talked about homework as a must. There is no compromise on homework that you need to do if you want to be a good writer, because if you want to be a good writer, you will be remembered for a long, long, long time for your writings. If you just want to write for just 1-2 articles, happy to see your byline and forget about it, then it's a different story. But if you want to be a serious writer, you need to do your homework. And again, another example I can give you is I was on the audition panel of All India Radio for radio jockeys some couple of years back, and we interviewed nearly 100 of them, and you will not believe it, hardly 1 or 2 of them knew about Akashvani. All of them knew about the other private channels. They came there not doing their homework of what is the channel they want to be engaged with, why they're coming. And I found the same thing with HR also. I would send candidates who would go for interviews, but do nothing to know about what the company is. And they would say, no, it's okay. Once we get an offer letter, we'll know what the company is all about. They wouldn't do their homework. Now, I don't know if it's a generational thing or if people are too busy, but you cannot compromise on homework. One has to do that part of homework to be serious about anything, any profession, anything. You need to equip yourself with the necessary knowledge or information it takes. And another important question is, if you're interviewing somebody or if you're writing, do not hesitate to ask questions, because don't think that what will so-and-so think of me? Will I look stupid? You can always say, sorry, this is something I'm ignorant about. Can you educate me on this? And ask questions, including the spelling of how they spell their names. People are very sensitive about the spelling of their names. So don't hesitate to ask questions. This is after you've done your homework. Like you will not go and if you're interviewing a legend like G.R. Vishwanath, you're not going to ask him how many hundreds have you scored. You will have obviously done that, but definitely you can ask him, okay, can you tell me what you felt when you scored your first 100? You're well within your domain for that. So don't hesitate to ask questions, because sometimes some of the most innocuous questions will give you the most amazing answers. So leave the inhibitions and ask questions unhesitatingly if it needs to be asked. And when you've written your story, you have to become your own editor first. You will have to critically look at the story. You will have to come out of the story as a third person and look at it and start editing your story. You will be amazed to see how much have I written this kind of a thing? Oh, did I write this? How could it be? You will discover things that you have written in the flow, but you have to become your editor first, for which you have to come out of your story. I've seen a lot of youngsters. They're very happy about what they've written. And you start loving your baby, that you will not like criticism. That shouldn't happen. You must be critical about your own writing. That is when it shapes up into a very good, tight, well presented, crisp piece. Not a word extra, not a sentence extra. It will give you the exact content that you want to present. And when you're writing, another important area is you have to be familiar with the relevant laws. Today we are dealing with, there was a time when it was only about criminal law when it came to plagiarism or defamation, but today we have cyber laws, we have very stringent IT laws. So if you're writing about something or somebody, you have to also be conscious of whether something you're writing is going to affect you and the publication, whether it's going to be a contentious issue, particularly copyright infringement. You have to be familiar with the laws that exist pertaining to what you're going to write. So some of the samples of bad writing, I thought I'll just show, somebody wrote page numbers on the documents, at times made with a pen. Obviously, if you're writing something, you're making it with a pen or a pencil. So even every word counts towards quality of the sentence and the language. Again, their own thoughts and ideas. Now you can't be, it can't be somebody else's own thoughts and ideas where you will be attributing it to the person. But if you're writing about your own, obviously it'll be your thoughts and ideas. And this, the third sentence is something our editor, there used to be a very senior gentleman, Professor Divakaran, who was the editor of Hindu those days. So he corrected me in one of the writings, saying succumb to his injuries. He said, how can somebody succumb to somebody else's injuries? One has to succumb to his own injuries. So these are the ways language gets tightened. Again, a man was holding a cobra snake. Obviously, a cobra is a snake. So these are areas you can look at in what you write, because a lot of times we speak in a different way, and the spoken word can't be put in writing. It's different when you write. You can't it can't be the same thing as you speak, so you can get sensitive to how you're writing things. This is an area that we have left behind, paying attention to the vernacular language, and this is a huge loss in terms of the literary field itself. We have to focus on our vernacular skills. Primarily, let us all accept one thing, that the mother tongue, the language that we have grown with, is in our DNA. Whether we know it or not, it's part of us, and we have to pay attention to the vernacular language, because one is, after all, English is still an alien language for us. It's no doubt a very good language, but there are expressions in English that have limitations that your vernacular language doesn't have. This is an area that people should. You don't have to leave behind English, but you can also develop a skill in writing in your vernacular language. And for a lot of people may feel that I'm not good at English. So what if you're not good at English? You will be good at your mother tongue. You can hone your skills in any of the languages. English is not the end all of it. And in fact, some of the finest and rich writings that exist today are in the vernacular language. Unfortunately, we have not been exposed to it as much as they should have been. And honing one's skills in the native language is good, because genetically it's with you, and you will be very comfortable with it, whichever be the language. To that extent, I'm happy now the national education policy is also making this mother tongue a medium of instructions. Some of the finest writers, I'll give you the example of D.V. Gundappa, the literary doyen. Those who are non-Kannadigas can Google and see. Now, DVG was a constitutional expert. His writings in Kannada and English are outstanding, and one would need somebody else to kind of not interpret, but give a discourse on his writings. They were so intense and so profound. But DVG was just a matriculate. He was just a matriculate, and believe me, he was a constitutional expert. How did he get this? So one has to, don't have limitations in your mind about language. Hone your skills in your native mother tongue, whichever it is. So another important area today, it has always been a great area of interest, journalism, photojournalism. It's an amazing, it's an ocean, and today, and photojournalism was a specialized field in those days. We had photographers, very highly skilled photographers who took some of the most amazing photos. But today, every person is a photographer with his mobile phone. He's a director. He's got an editing studio in his palm. So photojournalism is a great opportunity for all of you in this particular generation. But again, just like nose for news, you have to have your antennas tuned to spot a good opportunity for a photo which speaks a story by itself. It is beyond the written word. One photo can speak a volume of pages of story. And if you Google, particularly during the famine in Africa, there were so many very heartrending photos, even during the wartime stories, all of this. So photojournalism is a great opportunity. And today, given the kind of technology, the high-end cell phones that one has with cameras, it is just about how you put to use your creativity and your alertness. To give an example, of course, I didn't have, it was not the days of mobile phone, but for any of you who have seen the High Court building, I once went there, and it was the High Court building. Right under the portico was a no parking sign. And just all around the no parking sign, below it were two-wheelers parked, most of them belonging to advocates. So I immediately rushed home, picked up my camera, came and took a photograph, and it was published in Deccan Herald. Now, the next day when I went back there, can you imagine? I thought the vehicles would be removed, but the no parking signal was removed. The sign was removed. So, photojournalism is a story by itself. So this is an opportunity that students and youngsters and anybody should explore because of the opportunity. Now, here are some photographs that are there that will speak for themselves. And, and today you walk out with your cell phone, you can come back with 10 photographs. So the essentials of journalism are, the students of journalism know this. This is the basic foundation of journalism, of who, when, why, what, how, and where, the 5 W's and a H, as we call it. So your article must definitely have, who is it you're talking about? What is it you're talking about? Why are you writing about it? What is the reason you're writing about it? And when did such a thing happen? Where did it happen? And how did it happen? Now, your story, now after seeing this, if you go back to any article, and if any one of these are not answered, it'll leave you wondering what's the article all about. So this is the basic foundation of journalism, where you need to focus on giving the reader a complete picture of it and not leave him clueless about, okay, you read about something, where did this happen? Did this happen in Bangalore or in California or any place? So you need to because location is important, where it happened, then you can connect the dots for other things, or how did it happen? So this is a very, very important aspect one has to focus on the 5 W's and a H. And also in this, in covering the 5 W's and H, we also come to the other primary function of journalism, of media, is we have to inform it. One of the responsibilities of journalism is to inform, to educate, to interpret, to guide, and of course to entertain. Now, one of these have to be done in your article. Either you're informing somebody or you're interpreting an issue. Now, you would have seen today media as agog with so many issues that are being interpreted. Article 370 was amazing flood of interpretations of the article. It went to the basic framework of the Constitution. At no point of time was the Constitution so hugely debated and discussed as when the repealing of Article 370 happened. So your article, your writing should have one of these elements, to inform, whether you're interpreting an issue, whether it's economic reforms or anything that's happening currently, are you interpreting it? And to educate, you're educating. Now, COVID time is when a whole lot of articles came out, educating people about what the virus is about, what are the medications, what is the, impact of the vaccine. So one of the educate, and again to guide the reader towards something. Again, COVID is the best example, where you had any number of articles telling you of do's and don'ts and guiding. And definitely entertainment, I don't have to tell. Bollywood gives us more than necessary information to entertain. So entertain is part of one of the arms of journalism. Now, so it is the angle that you take. This slide is self-informatory of how you look at things, which way do you want to look at things and deal with it. So it's about primarily your perceptions. How fertile are your perceptions is very important when you're dealing with media, because you can take whichever side of the coin, but make sure that whichever side of the coin you take, you're not misleading the reader. You're not misleading the reader into a bias that could kind of brainwash him. So you have to be, even in cases of perceptional change, you have to be objective. So look at that angle of changed perceptions. So this impact of internet is an area that, one can, you've got any number of experts who can talk to you, lecture at length on this. I'm just touching on it because I'm not so great an expert technologically. I'm also as technologically challenged as many others of my age are. And so the impact of internet, now what happens is, when you write something, you give it to a newspaper, you give it to a magazine, or whichever, a channel. So not every one of them are going to accept your story. It's not that easy to break through that barrier. So what has happened now, internet has given the opportunity for this. In our days, if a newspaper took it, they took it. If they didn't take it, all our hard work would go into this cold storage, just back into our cupboards. But internet has today thrown open a huge ocean of opportunities. Blogging is one of them. You can upload your videos, which is vlogs. Today we have got vlogs, we've got blogs. Then you can upload audio. So you don't have a publisher, become your own publisher. You don't have a channel that will receive your content. You upload it yourself. You become the owner of it. So this is, of course, it's easier said than done, but blogging is very, very serious business. You can't just put trash there, because if you put trash, it is going to get trashed. But if you look at bloggers, some of them have made it so big. Of course, it's also economically very lucrative. If your blogs are good, you get paid heavily and very well recognized. But blogging, again, is very serious business and can get you recognition. Here is a space, a golden opportunity for you to put everything that you want to write, but there's a discipline to it. You've got to be timely about it. If you're going to upload every week, what is the content you're going to upload? Do you have a theme for the content? Are you kind of sure of what you want to put? You can't put something about cookery today and tomorrow something about sports and day after tomorrow about jogging. So you need to have some kind of a clarity of what you want to put on your blog site, because that is going to show you as an expert in that field. You will get your recognition as somebody who's good at it. So blogging is a great opportunity. And also for writers, there are blogs where they accept stories. There are syndicates. Today we have news syndicates. People have started syndicates where, just like in a newspaper or any channel, they have correspondents. If I have a good story to give, I can sell it to any of the blogs or any of the syndicates, news syndicates. So opportunities based on internet are amazing for a person who wants to write articles or videos or even audio medium. So today internet gives you a platform that is not limited to just the print medium, where you're dependent on a editor of a newspaper to accept your story or a channel editor to take your video. This is something all of us fall for. No matter how careful you are, this is something each one of us would have fallen for at some point of time or continue falling, because half of WhatsApp is fake news. Half of the things that you see, because it is so quick, because news churns out at such speed that, and what the channel or what the newspaper at times wants is quick attention. They want to grab the attention of the viewer or the reader. So sometimes facts are given a go by, but fake news is a big, it's a bane. It's a bane that has, I don't think it'll ever go, but we have to be careful not to fall for it. Now, Photoshop is very active on fake news. All kinds of photos, historical distortions, and people giving wrong stories. Let me alert young journalists on one other aspect. We are talking of fake news that we read or we see in videos or photographs, but here are things journalists have to be careful. I would go to a person asking for a story or interviewing. They can give me a whole wrong story and I will believe them and come and write it. Now, to get that bit of attention, the person could have given me a complete fake story and I would have fallen for it. So it is not just about reading, hearing, or seeing fake news. Even as a writer, you have to be cautious whether somebody is giving you fake news, and you have to verify that news before you put it. So this is something that today newspapers have woken up to it, because there is a lot of litigation that happened, because we have channels that are rivals. So your rival is always waiting to expose you on a fake news that you have posted. So newspapers and channels today have an entire department dedicated to fact check. They have fact check teams. So how do you deal with fake news is, one is you have to be very critical. You have to, don't take everything at face value. You have to have a critical mindset where you will evaluate it. Is this true? Is this correct? I mean, could this be really true? So you have to evaluate, check the source. A lot of times, some of these channels have are infamous for fake news itself. Oh, is it so and so, so and so? Okay, you don't have to believe their news. They are filled with fake news. So they have developed the reputation of hosting fake news. So you have to check the source. And another place you can detect fake news is, there are any number of the URL. It'll have very weird, out of the normal URLs. So this URL will look suspicious, and then you can check. And then Google has its reverse image check, where you can see whether a photograph has been photoshopped, whether it's really a photo or it has been photoshopped and altered. So, and then you have, this is just one or two of those examples I've given. But again, if you go to Uncle Google, you'll find a whole lot of sites that will help you in checking facts, for fact check. So I think I jumped. Okay. So to, wrap it up, one is, you have to, the first rule is keep the language simple. You have to, everybody need not be a Shashi Tharoor. In fact, Shashi Tharoor is good for our WhatsApp conversations or jokes about his English. He enjoys it. But the thing is, if you were to write like Shashi Tharoor, you would hardly have a reader other than Shashi Tharoor himself. So keep your language simple. Even the most technical stuff, try to make it simple, because don't take the reader for granted. The reader would know a lot more than you, but at the same time, think of the reader who wants to read your article, but is likely to put it aside because there are words in it or sentences that will go above his head. So be kind on the reader, keep your language simple. It's going to be the most attractive article if you keep your language simple and still express yourself well. And you have to make it catchy. Now, how do you make it catchy is, when you start the article with, we call it the first paragraph is called the lead. So if you get a good lead, if you are able to catch the reader's attention in that first paragraph or the first two paragraphs, then be sure that he's going to read on. So you have to make it catchy to tell him, hey, look, this is what the article is all about. This is what I'm putting together, and this is why you should read it. So make it a catchy lead, and definitely you'll have the reader's attention in it. And then you run a good narrative, let it be consistent. There are inconsistencies. You would have come across a lot of articles where the first two paragraphs, then the third, fourth, you don't understand what is the writer trying to say. You start wondering, what is it all about? What is the writer trying to say? Either they are repetitive or they don't reveal till almost the whole article you've read, and you're still clueless about what is the article all about. So keep the narrative very consistent. Don't fit in too many ideas into one paragraph. Split them. Have multiple. Your article obviously will have multiple elements of ideas and facts. So split them. Don't put all of it together into one paragraph or one sentence. We were told one idea for a paragraph. So you split it, make it simple, run a good narrative, and let there be clarity in your article. If you were to just close the article, read it after 2 days, like I said, come out of the story and read it like an outsider, you will see whether you're able to understand your own article and whether there are gaps in it. And again, do not be repetitive. Now that I've told you, if you go back to some articles, you will see articles that are repetitive. Again, where is the need to say the same thing all over again? Today you'll find internet is so full of them. They are going on because they need to just run through and hold the order. Also, I think there's a Google meter of how long a person stays on a page and things like this. I don't know what could be the technological reason, but articles are unnecessarily lengthy and repetitive. So avoid that, and try to tell the most technical things in the most simple way. It's an art that can be developed. I mean, it's a skill that definitely with a little bit of will and exercise, it can be developed. It's not much of a problem, but yes, it will also kind of help you as a person, refine you as a person, as a writer. So keep the language simple, make a good narrative, get a good lead, and make sure that the article answers everything that the reader wants to know and doesn't leave him with question marks, or that he puts it aside. And the other most important thing is rejections. If your article is rejected, do not lose patience. Do not be demotivated. Don't let it dampen your spirits. You must have patience and rejections. There is no reason why every article of yours has to be accepted. You ask any writer in the world, anybody would have definitely gone through this phase of rejections. And here I want to tell you about this person. I'm sure Arvind and others would remember, but the youngsters today, you can go to again Google Uncle and see more for it. There used to be this person called Regret Iyer. Now you'll find this name very strange. Regret Iyer is his name today. So he was a person who was a writer. He started writing letters to the editor. By the way, those days, even writing letters to the editor was a skill. Yeah, people would come back so thrilled to say that his letter was published in the newspaper. Just to see his name and his letter published was a thrill, in those days. So, this man used to write letters to the editor. He wanted to be a journalist. He wrote articles, but they were all rejected, to the extent that he collected 375 regret slips. Those days we used to get a slip, a printed slip. Regret cannot publish your article. That used to be the one. So he collected 375 of them, which means he never gave up trying to sell his story. He would write and sell, go and give it. So what happened is, and editors will not come back to you even today, those days or even today, no editor is going to come back and tell you why your article was rejected, because they don't have the time for it. They will not do it. If it's not good enough, no, it's not accepted. So Regret Iyer did not lose hope. He kept on writing no matter what, collected 375 regret slips. And the thing about him is he had a great talent for identifying news. He was so quick about catching news. And only thing is, he didn't know how to write. His writing was shabby, which is why his articles were getting rejected. People at the desk don't have time to rewrite stories. So his articles got rejected because of shabby writing, but they had some, the knack he had for gathering news was amazing. So what Regret Iyer did was, he was a damn good photographer also. So he would go and hide behind dustbins and catch photographs. He would take photos of people posing as beggars. He would go near government offices. Like I said, hide behind dustbins, hide behind the wall, take photos of people engaging in corrupt activities. So much so people, particularly in government, used to be very scared of him, where this guy is around with his lens hiding somewhere. So Regret Iyer made it so big as a photographer. He became his own publisher. Then he became a writer also. So much so that he became famous as Regret Iyer. He changed his name on his passport. His wife's name also got changed to Vijayalakshmi Regret Iyer. His son, who is also a famous photographer today, is also called Shravan Regret Iyer. He made it so big that BBC wrote about him. He got covered by BBC, and this is a grand example to tell people, do not be demotivated if your articles are not accepted. Don't let it dampen your spirits. Keep writing, keep, see where you can improve, and what is it that is missing, that is, getting you the rejections. fill in the gap, and definitely you will succeed and become a very good writer. So with that, I'm closing with this famous statement of Louis L'Amour. He was a famous, writer, American best-selling author in America, who has, published more than 100 books. Now, Louis L'Amour says, start writing no matter what. Water doesn't flow unless the faucet is turned on. How profound and correct it is. He says, just start writing. How do you know you can't write or you're not a good writer? Just start writing. So to tell you who Louis L'Amour was, again, to an inspirational story. Louis L'Amour, being the best-selling author, American author, he left school at the age of 15. He had to drop out of school because of economic conditions. Eventually, he became a world traveler who got on a boat and sailed around. He lands in Tibet and he starts living with bandits in Tibet. See the kind of adventurous life he has. He lives with bandits in Tibet. He worked as an elephant handler, and then he was a professional boxer. Then he putting all his experiences into writing, and all these writings translated themselves into amazing books that Louis L'Amour's books were, his readers would wait for it. Every 6 months, if he did not come out with a book, his readers would be out there asking him, why is your book not out? When is your next book coming? That's the kind of readership he had acquired. He became a very famous writer. So taking inspiration from Louis L'Amour, I would say that all of you, those who want to write, just start writing, and no matter what, you will succeed. With that, I thank you all so much for this patient hearing. I hope I've been able to do justice for the time you have spent with me on this. Meghna?
Yeah, Professor Krishna.
Yeah, if there are any
Sir.
questions, I'm happy to take them.
Renuka will direct the questions to the speaker, sir.
Yeah.
Renuka?
Yes, I hope I'm unmuted.
Yeah, you are. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Students, you're welcome to ask your questions. Please keep them to the point and avoid making a short speech yourself. Go on, please, students.
Renuka, there's already one question in the chat
One question has
box.
come.
Yeah.
All right.
From Rohit.
All right. Rohit, please go on.
He's already sent it. You can probably read it out.
All right. The question says from Rohit, ma'am, can you please briefly tell us about your prior successes, challenges, and major responsibilities that you have come across in your journey as a journalist?
Well, there have been quite a few. Not everything has been a cakewalk. But if you're asking about challenges and responsible writing, I'll tell you about a series I was to write on the Bangalore University. This was somewhere in the early 90s. I had an assignment from Deccan Hill to write a series on the Bangalore University. Things were not going well with the university. Like always, it is shrouded in controversy. So I had to interview people, and so the vice chancellor then never gave me an interview for 1 month. I was being dodged around. You can come tomorrow, you can call day after tomorrow. This went on for about a month or more than that, and my article was held up. I couldn't file the story without getting his side of the story or his statement on things that I was going to write about. So no matter what, then the editor said, you go ahead and file the story. So I wrote the story saying, the vice chancellor dodged me for an interview. I used the word. He said he was not available. He didn't give me an interview and things like that. I said that I couldn't get that side of it. So the moment also what Deccan Hill did is in bold print, it said Bangalore University in a super mess. That was the headline in bold print. And it really made huge waves. And then the vice chancellor came out and denied, saying that I never approached him. And see, those days were not the days of cell phones or where I could record conversations. And I had no proof, but my editor was proof for me. So he came back with a strong letter saying, she never approached me. I don't know her. She never, asked for an interview. So that was a challenge, but I was able to overcome that. Again, that is because of the credibility that you create for yourself. If your editor knows, if your readers know your credibility levels, they will stand by you. So these are some of the challenges. Yes, there are quite a few challenges where I have had to abandon a story midway. Even again, the Bangalore University series, after 3 or 4 articles was published, they brought in pressure to stop the series because it was going against the university and they were having difficulty. The vice chancellor, obviously, immediately after this article, the vice chancellor was asked to resign and a new vice chancellor took over. And at that time, he said, I have just taken over. I don't want to take with a negative, image like this. So pressure was brought in to stop the series. Though the series part of it after that had nothing to do with the university, it had more to do with colleges and the examination process and things like that. So there have been instances where a lot of articles I've had to abandon midway because either I don't get the information that I need, or it turns the way, there's an article I want to write in a certain way and it comes out that that's not what I want to write. So there are challenges like this.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. There is another question. It says, it is from Pranav Kashyap and is asking, ma'am, how do you make sure you have covered the best of both sides of a story, keeping in mind, how do we remain unbiased?
If I can think of an example, see now, the latest is our Chopra, who won the gold. Now you see his, there's so much of controversy that's come out with the coaches, SAI taking one version, the coaches saying one thing, he's saying one thing, all kinds of reports are coming in. So what you have to do is you'll have to talk to all of them. And for when you talk to them, you will have to quote them for what they say. You can't write it without quoting them because you have to attribute every sentence that's spoken, which you're writing, it has to be attributed to the person. So you are absolved of being part of it. So the way you have, you'll have to do you can be 100% at times, but there are times when you cannot be 100% because tomorrow something else will crop up, something unheard of. So your safeguard here is to talk to the coach, to talk to the subject, if it is Chopra, for instance. Talk to him, talk to the coach, talk to Sai, talk to Jindal, talk to every one of these agencies, talk to his friends, talk to his parents. Now, you may not quote all of them. You cannot quote all of them, but you will have your material as your safeguard.
All right. Any other questions? Students, any other questions, please? So do we take that as no more questions?
There was also an appreciation note.
Uh,
The chart, you can read that.
all right. Let me just go back to messages and see. Yes, sir. Thank you, Vice Chancellor, sir. There is a message from Himaditi Deshpande. She says, grateful to Ms. Chudi Shivaram and DSU for conducting this webinar. This is a great start to my life in CJMC. Thank you. This was really helpful and informative. And needless to say, thank you from all of us as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for giving me this platform. And I hope I have done justice to this time that all of you have spent on this.
Professor Krishna.
Thank you, Ms. Shivaram. It definitely was worth a while to listen to you. I would also like to thank our Vice Chancellor, Dr. K.M.B. Murthy, and Dr. Arvind Srinivas, as well as my colleagues at CJMC and our students. Thank you. And again, Ms. Shivaram, thank you very much for spending so much time with us.
Thank you all so much too. Good day
Yeah.
to all of you.
Madam, we will put one request to you again.
Yes.
Please take some more time to talk about something else next whenever you're free. Please give us one more opportunity to listen to you. It was one of the outstanding lectures that I listened to. The language is so simple and everything was highly informative. I think the entire 1 hour, we did not even find that 1 hour was passed. I think it's so good. So good. I think very informative. Excellent. I think you have given a lot of inputs for budding journalists. I think it's fantastic. I think please
Thank you.
give us one more opportunity to talk on some other topic which of your interest to
Sure.
our students again.
Thank you
But
all
it's-
so much.
Yeah. But it's really fortunate to have you on this day talking to our students.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. And definitely it was a pleasure to engage with all of you and the students who's, of course, invisible students, but it's very valuable for me as well. Thank you so much.
The other thing also, for the first time, the strength was constant from word go till the end. Not even a single person. So, yeah, it's excellent.
That is. Thank you so much to all of
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good day to you all.